You've been studying Mandarin for 2 years. You can understand most of your favorite Netflix show, you can order at restaurants, your friends think that you are basically fluent. But here is what you won't admit out loud. You haven't actually improved in the last 6 months. You're stuck. And the scariest part, you might stay stuck forever. Because the intermediate plateau isn't actually about running out of words to learn. It's about something that is way more uncomfortable. Something most language teachers won't tell you because it requires you to look at the truth about yourself that you'd rather just ignore. Your ego is sabotaging your fluency, and it's doing so quietly that you didn't even notice. Let me show you what I mean. When you first started learning your target language, progress felt like magic. Week 1, you learned hello and thank you. Week 2, you could introduce yourself. Month 3, maybe you could actually order coffee without pointing around like some sort of confused tourist. Every single day felt like it brought you a visible, tangible win. Your brain was on fire, you felt smart, you felt capable. And your ego? Well, your ego loved every single second of it. But then something shifted. Around the early intermediate stage, maybe B1, maybe B2, whatever, the wins started to space out. You'd study for a week, but you'd barely notice the difference. You'd have a conversation and realize that you were using the exact same sentence structures that you used 3 months ago. The progress that used to feel like a rocket ship suddenly felt like you were pushing a boulder uphill in the rain. And here's where it gets dangerous. Because when progress slows down, your brain doesn't say, okay, this is normal. Language learning is logarithmic, not linear. Your brain says something more primal. I might fail. I might look stupid. I need to protect myself. And so you do. Without even realizing it, you build something called a comfort zone. And that comfort zone becomes a cage. Let me paint you a picture, and maybe this will sound familiar. You're watching a show in your target language as you do. But it's not just any show, it's a show that you've already watched maybe 4 times in the past. You tell yourself that you're reinforcing your learned vocabulary, but really you're rewatching it because you understand 99.9% of the vocabulary in it, and it just feels really good. In other words, it feels safe. It even feels like proof that you're fluent. Or maybe you're in some sort of conversation exchange. You've been meeting with the same language partner for months. You talk about the weather, you talk about your most recent weekend, maybe the funny things that happened at work, basically just the same topics over and over. The same grammar structures, the same little bubble of language that you mastered a year ago. And when someone suggests that you try a podcast aimed at native speakers, you think, maybe later, I'm not really ready yet. When someone invites you to a local meetup with native speakers where they'll be talking fast, using slang, interrupting each other, you think to yourself, that sounds kind of intimidating, maybe I'll go later when I'm ready. But here is the trap. You never get better by staying where you are comfortable. You've created what I like to call the false fluency illusion. You feel fluent in your controlled environment. But the second that you step out of it, the second you encounter a regional accent or a fast-talking stranger or a movie without subtitles, you realize the truth. You're not fluent, you're just familiar. And that is a massive difference. Now, before you click away thinking I'm just here to talk to you about the things that feel bad, stick with me. Because understanding why this happens is the first step to actually escaping it. Oh, and if you want a clear system to break through the current plateau and reach real conversational fluency, then go ahead and take a look at the link in the description. But more on that in a little bit. So why does this plateau happen? Well, it comes down to one word. Identity. When you were a beginner, your identity was simple. You were a learner. You were supposed to make mistakes. You were supposed to not understand things. That was the whole point. There was zero shame in asking, sorry, wait, what does that mean? Because of course you didn't know. You just started. But once you hit intermediate, we both know something sneaky kind of happens. You stop seeing yourself as this learner. You little by little begin to see yourself as this knower. You've put in hundreds of hours, you've learned thousands of words, you can have conversations, you earned the right to feel competent. And competence, of course, feels amazing. So your brain does everything it can to protect that feeling. It steers you towards content that you already understand. It nudges you towards conversations you can dominate. It whispers, don't try that hard thing, you might mess up. Stay where it's safe. Your ego isn't trying to hurt you. It's just trying to protect you from discomfort and feeling dumb again. But here's the brutal truth. Feeling dumb is where growth lives. Real fluency doesn't happen in your comfort zone. It happens in something that we can call productive discomfort. And productive discomfort feels terrible. It feels like you've forgotten everything you've learned. It feels like you're starting all over again. But that feeling That's not failure, that is progress. Let me tell you a story. While I've been learning Mandarin, I've hit this exact wall. I've been studying for about a year, I could have solid conversations with my wife, I could watch a lot of shows and follow along pretty well. I felt good and I felt fluent. Then one day down the road, her family invited me to dinner. It was 8 native speakers and they were all talking over each other. There were different regional accents, there was slang that I didn't recognize, topics that I hadn't prepared for. I sat there understanding maybe 30–40% of what was being said. And I remember pretty clearly the thought that just kept looping in my head. I'm terrible at this. Maybe I should just give up. I thought I was so much further along. Why am I feeling like a beginner all over again? But here's the thing. I didn't waste that year of studying. I just kind of been living in a bubble where I controlled the difficulty level. A bubble where I only practiced with people who spoke slowly or clearly or used words that I understood or whatever. A bubble where I rewatched the same shows because they made me feel smart. But that dinner that I had was a gift. Because in some ways, it shattered the illusion. It showed me that fluency is not about comfort. Fluency actually is about chaos. And the goal isn't about learning to avoid chaos. It's actually about learning how to dance with it. So I made a decision. I stopped protecting my ego and started seeking out discomfort on purpose. I stopped rewatching shows that I already understood and started watching news programs where anchors spoke at lightning speed. I stopped only speaking to the few people I was comfortable with and started joining different calls and different communities and places that I could speak to people in Mandarin, even with thick regional accents. I stopped shadowing beginner podcasts and started shadowing stuff that really kind of made my brain hurt. And guess what happened? I got worse before I got better. For maybe about 2 weeks or so, I felt like I had regressed. My confidence tanked, I stumbled over words that I used to nail, I felt slow, I felt stupid. But then, as it always does, something clicked. My brain adapted. The chaos became manageable and the discomfort became normal. And suddenly, I could understand conversations I couldn't touch a month earlier. And that is when I realized this, that the plateau isn't a language problem, it's an ego problem. So that said, how do you fix it? Well, step 1 is admit that you're stuck. Not in some sort of self-pitying way, but in a factual way. Look at your last 3 months or so of study. Be honest with yourself. Have you actually improved? Or have you just been maintaining? Step 2 is to re-adopt the beginner's humility. This part, as you know by now, is hard because your ego's gonna hate it. But you need to go back to seeing yourself as a learner, not a knower. That means embracing confusion. That means being okay with not understanding. That means letting go of the need to feel competent every single time you engage with your target language. Step 3 is seek out productive discomfort. Go ahead and make a list of the things in your target language that just feel out of reach. Maybe it's a podcast full of native speakers. Maybe it's a novel without translation. Maybe it's a conversation group where you are the weakest speaker in the room. Then do those things regularly, even though they suck. Step 4 is track your discomfort. Here's a weird trick, okay? Rate every session on a discomfort scale from 1 to 10. 1 is I understood everything and felt great. 10 is I was lost the entire time and wanted to quit. You want to be averaging around a 6 or a 7 regularly. If you're consistently at a 3 or below, you're not challenging yourself, you are just maintaining. Step 5, ask yourself this reflection question once per week. When was the last time I truly didn't understand something? If you can't remember, you're stuck in the comfort zone and you need to go deeper. Here's the reality that most people probably don't want you to hear. Fluency is not a destination. It's not a finish line that you get to cross and then you just get to relax. Fluency is a constantly moving target. Native speakers are constantly learning new words. They're constantly adjusting to new slang, new accents, new contexts. If native speakers are still learning their own language, then why would you ever stop? The intermediate plateau happens when you treat fluency like a trophy you've earned instead of a skill you're constantly sharpening. It happens when you stop being a student and start being a tourist in your own learning. And the cure isn't more vocabulary lists. It's not more grammar drills, it's not a better app. The cure is humility. The cure is discomfort. The cure is letting go of that story that you're good enough and embracing the truth that there's always another level. So as always, here is my challenge to you. This week, do one thing in your target language that scares you. One thing that you genuinely don't know if you'll succeed. Watch a show that you've been avoiding because it's too hard and you'll get to it later. Join a conversation group where you are genuinely the weakest link. Read an article aimed at native speakers and resist the urge to translate every single word. Feel the discomfort, sit with it, and let it teach you. Fluency isn't comfort. Fluency is chaos that you've learned to dance with. And if you're serious about breaking through the plateau and finally reaching true conversational fluency where you can hold real conversations, understand native content, and speak without translating in your head constantly, then check the link in the description. I personally work with learners to take them from stuck to conversationally fluent in about 200 days. No fluff, no gimmicks, just a clear path forwards. The plateau isn't permanent, but escaping it requires you to stop protecting your ego and start chasing discomfort. Are you ready? Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.